Good morning, everybody. So for today, Wednesday, April 29th, what we're going to do is we're going to keep on going through everything, but today, specifically, what we're going to talk about is food webs and food chains. And as we go through today, what I want you guys to think about is what you guys can, specifically about the ecosystem you chose. So yesterday, you guys should have chose your ecosystem, either grassland, savanna, temperate forest, rainforest, ocean, deserts, one of those things. Okay. Now, each day we're going to go through some new concepts. Today it's going to be about food chains and food webs. And specifically for your project, what you're going to do is you're going to find a food chain or food web that is in your ecosystem specifically. Okay. So remember, try to take notes to help with your understanding of everything. You can watch the video as many times as you want, um, but try to think as we go through this again, what would a food chain or a food web be for my ecosystem? Now, what is a food chain? A food chain is a series of predators and prey that rely on the previous one for food. This shows the transfer of energy from one organism to the next. So, food chains always start with energy from the sun. Energy from the sun is used by plants to grow, and plants are what they're called our primary producers. They produce all the energy. And then you'll have things that eat those plants, they're called herbivores. And then herbivores will then be eaten by carnivores. And those carnivores can be eaten by other carnivores, all the way up until you find something that is an apex predator, and that apex predator has no enemies, essentially. Nothing will eat it. Okay? So for us, we are an apex predator. We, human beings, we have nothing that eats us because we are at the top of pretty much every food chain. All right? You can also think about it as you have a producer, okay, going through all the different things that eat other things. But when all these things die, then they're decomposed. Their nutrients are broken down into simple molecules, which can then be used by the grass again, okay, or the plants to grow, okay? The last thing about this is it's really important to understand arrow movement. Arrows always point in the direction where energy is transferring, all right? So the energy from the grass is transferring into the grasshopper. Okay, when the grasshopper is eaten by the frog, its energy is being transferred into the frog, which is transferred into the snake, and finally transferred into the apex predator. All right, here we go. Next one, food web. This is a series of organisms interrelated in their feeding habits, the smallest one being fed upon by a larger one. So basically what it is a food web is multiple food chains all linked together. A predator from one food chain may be linked to the prey of another food chain. Now, I want you to look at this real quick, go back to this food chain, and think to yourself, does a frog only eat grasshoppers? And the answer is obviously no. It might eat flies or other types of bugs. Does a hawk, the apex predator, only eat snakes? No. It could eat snakes, might even eat grasshoppers, it might eat some frogs, it might eat a lot of different things. Okay? A food web is like the whole picture, and a food chain is just one little snippet of that picture. All right? Now, if you see this, again, you have to look at where are the arrows pointing. Okay? Let's start with just the fox. Okay? These arrows pointing to the fox means energy is being transferred to it, which means the fox is eating a rabbit, it's eating a vole, and it's also eating a mouse. Okay? But the mouse isn't just eaten by the fox, it's eaten by the owl. Okay? And what does the mouse eat? The mouse eats this blackberry bush. All right? So a food web is a big picture of everything that's happening inside of an ecosystem. All right? So what I want you guys to do today is when you go through your notes, and you're working on your project today, I want you to find me one food chain where it's just a straight line like this, okay, from your ecosystem. And I also want you to find me a food web, okay, something that looks interconnected, where everything is interconnected like this, where you can see all these different organisms that are relying upon each other. All right? Now, one of the things you need to understand is trophic levels, and we call these energy pyramids. Okay? We have at the very bottom of our pyramid is going to be our primary producers. Above it are going to be our herbivores. These are things that only eat plants. Then we'll have our carnivores, and finally we'll have our apex predators, or our top carnivores. Now, there is a very important thing to understand when it comes to energy pyramids, okay? At the very bottom, this is all the energy, okay, from an ecosystem, all right? When you go up each level to the next level, you're only taking about 10% of the energy from what was before. So all these plants, say they have 100 joules of energy. When you go up to this level, there's only 10 joules of energy left. When you go up to this level, there's only 1 joule of energy. And when you get to the top, there's only 0.1 joule. You divide everything by 10 every time you go from one level to the next. And a lot of energy is lost as heat, okay, through the process of consuming other things. Now, you also talk about these as orders. The first trophic level is going to be your producers. Second is the thing that eats the first, third, all the way up. Now, levels of consumers, okay? Primary consumers eat plants. Secondary consumers eat the things that eat plants. Tertiary consumers are found at the top, and they are the apex predators. All right. Remember, energy is lost from each trophic level because the organism use it to live. Shows the amount of energy or matter contained at each trophic level and how much is passed on. So again, this is a big chunk. It's about 100 joules of energy, say, and then it goes down to 10, 1, and 0.1. There is not, and think about this, how many plants are out there in an ecosystem versus how many wolves do we have in an ecosystem? Okay? There's not a lot of wolves, but there are a ton of plants. And that's because you keep losing energy as you go up. All right? Now, you need to remember that 10% number. Okay, that's very important. All right? And you need to remember, okay, producers have so much energy in them because they get it all from the sun. The sun is the source of all energy. The energy that the plants absorb from the sun, okay, we have that inside of us, that same energy. It's just been transferred and moved up into a food chain. For example, a food chain that we would be, right, is the sun makes grass, cows eat grass, we eat the cows. Okay? Different things like that you need to be able to understand. All right. Also, there's a few other things. Carrying capacity. This is the number of organisms that an area can support without the environment being negatively affected. Each ecosystem has a carrying capacity. When an ecosystem reaches carrying capacity, we say that it has stability, or that it will stay mostly the same over time. Now, usually, when we're not in like quarantine mode, when I'm teaching ecosystems, I use The Lion King all the time to talk about ecosystems because it's such a good example. Now, when Mufasa was in charge, right, of the Pride Lands, everything was good because they kept the number of organisms that the area could support at a low enough level. But then Scar comes in and he starts just eating and destroying everything with all these hyenas, and the carrying capacity gets too large, and you start having a negative impact on the environment. All right, so just remember carrying capacity. there's no negative effects. Remember in The Lion King where it talks about um, at the end how there's no grass, there's no water buffalo, there's no zebra. The environment has been negatively impacted because the carrying capacity, the number of organisms that an area can support, went too high. All right. Last thing is limiting factors. These are things, okay, that help to keep the number of organisms in a population well below the carrying capacity. Okay, limiting factors can be abiotic or biotic, meaning living or non-living, and they restrict the number of individuals in a population. So what are some things that are limiting factors? Okay, competitors. Okay, some things compete with other things for food. Disease and parasites. Okay, weather sometimes, floods, fires, things like that. Oh, fires is down here. The amount of available habitat and predators. Now, your homework today is going to be that I want to see you guys get slides 4 and 5 done on the Google assignment. I want you to find one example of a food web or a food chain that is found in the ecosystem, and I want you to explain how humans have impacted this ecosystem. Now, I haven't gone a lot into human impact on ecosystems, but I want you guys to try to see, all right, say for example, you're talking about the taiga, right? The taiga, there's a lot of oil production that's happening in the taiga, and that has some negative impacts on the environment. So maybe just look up your ecosystem and then look up human impact and see what pops up and try to find some good stuff. All right. Now, let me go over to the slides and show you specifically what slides you're going to be working on. And then I'll show you guys a quick example of how I would look this up. All right. Now, yesterday you guys should have finished slide 3. Slide 3 was finding an example of an herbivore, omnivore, carnivore, and decomposer. Okay. Now, today what you're going to do is you're going to find an example of one food web and you're going to find an example of one food chain. Okay. And I want you to show me, tell me what they are, and then include some images of what those look like. And then finally, the last thing you're going to do is you're going to talk about how have humans impacted this ecosystem. Have humans negatively impacted the environment? Okay. Or maybe they've had a positive impact on the environment. There are some ecosystems that we haven't had a positive impact on. So maybe you have one of those that we're talking about. Okay. And then what activity have humans had on the food web you have chosen? Okay. Show one image of how humans have impacted your ecosystem. Now, how would you do this on Google, or what would you look up? Really, what I would look up is I would type in your ecosystem. So say, for example, you're doing the tundra, okay? And I would just look up food webs. And then what I would see, you're going to see a ton of images. And you just got to make sure that they work. So for example, here's a good one. This one shows the food web of the tundra, showing polar bears, Arctic wolves, snow, owls. It's showing how everything is interconnected. And at the very bottom, it's showing the different things, okay, that are primary producers. Now, what you could also do is, say you don't want to Google food chain, you could just do a food chain based on this. For example, liverworts to pikas, pikas to Arctic foxes to polar bears, and polar bears to man. So, I want you guys to work on this today. I want you guys to try to get as much done as you can. Try to get done with at least slide 4, if not slide 5. We will be meeting today during our Google Meet at 11 a.m. So please come ask questions. I'll go over all the information that we're going to cover. Okay? And if you don't have any questions, have a great day. Get your work done. And I will